Mysteries abound around the world, from strange lights in the night sky to ghostly apparitions passing from one realm to the next. From the Great Pyramids of Egypt to what lies beneath the depths of Loch Ness. From Bigfoot to Atlantis, they are all mysteries waiting to be solved. Join Laurie Phillips, Lauren Smith, Graz, and Billy Simmons as they search for the truth on Nite Callers Radio.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Nite Callers Bigfoot Radio. It is May 12th today, 2016. We're all here tonight. Bill and Graz and Lauren and myself, Laurie, Hood. And so you went to say hello to everybody. How are y'all doing?
Fantastic. How are you?
Good. Good. Wishing it would. Oh, I forgot. And eventually we'll have Darth Vader on from time to time. We've got technical issues tonight. We have a really great guest, and we'll be bringing him on here in a minute. Just want to catch up with everybody and see what everyone's been up to this last week. No, it sounds more like a Bigfoot breathing. Yeah, it does.
Lauren has issues.
I don't know how. I'm not even... It's not near any of my...
All I have to say to Billy is juicy.
Yeah, the
word for tonight is juicy.
Go ahead and explain that one to the good folks, Grass.
It's called autocorrect, people. Get with the times.
Hey, I feel like I was victimized.
For those listening, I had one of those autocorrect situations. I was texting Billy, waiting for a reply. I set the phone down on my console of my Jeep, and my thumb happened to run over the keys, and it sent juicy to him.
Yeah. I was really
waiting. It took me a few seconds to notice, but
yeah. Then he called me about 3 seconds later. I can explain. Yeah.
I said, "Don't read any text." Of course, it was too late.
Well, at least it wasn't a boring week, right? I mean, that's.
Yeah.
There are worse things he could have texted you, and at least he called.
Juicy.
That's true.
He could have just left you hanging thinking, well, what the heck is juicy? I want to know. I think I want to know. I don't want to know, but I do want to know.
Well, I'm planning on later tonight after my tramadol kicks in. I'm texting him, so.
Oh.
We'll see how that goes.
Oh, my God.
Hell, I don't know I don't want to know what it means. It could be some psychological issues I have to work on, some subconscious things. My thumb did things I did not understand.
Out of thumb experience.
Out of thumb experience.
So I was right when I made the intro, Graz and Billy Simmons. Alrighty then.
Well, hey, you drove us to it, right? I mean, you won't split the names up. You know, what can I tell you? I thought it was some secret code.
We're legally separated right now, so we won't go into that.
That's true. I'm slapping him with a heck of an alimony suit.
Y'all are bad. You know, this is not Skype, but I'm glad y'all are warming up. Boy,
Oh,
well, I got to say something. Something's been on my mind for about a week or so, other than juicy.
Oh, God.
90% of the people that come on to this show, I don't know from Adam. Now, I've been doing this since 95, been on the internet and getting to know people in different ways and blogs and stuff like that since about 98, give or take. And I don't know.
Yes. You just don't get around, do you?
No, I just don't get around. That's much. Yeah. What I was going to say is that this show is about regular Bigfooters.
Yes, it is.
People out there that a lot of people don't know about.
It took you this long to figure that out, Chris. I mean,
yeah. Well, regular Bigfooters and people that people don't know too much about. You know, looking at this thing going on with the Ohio Conference and all these big fabulous names and everybody knows everybody, blah blah blah. All these rock stars, I call them, of the Bigfoot era and that kind of stuff. You know, and all these other. There's a bunch of. I'm not going to say which ones, a bunch of other blog talk shows, and they have these famous names, and everybody's patting each other on the back and going back and forth about that stuff. We haven't had more than a few of those famous names on this show. I prefer having just a regular Bigfoot.
I do too, because those are the people that get out there and do the most. I hate to say that, but that's true. They do. They accomplish more because they're harder workers, and they really don't care about the name they get. They care about the product they put out and what they're trying to learn. And so, you know, I can imagine there's been a lot of people that have hooked up with other people. They hear them on the radio and go, they're from my area, and they'll find them on Facebook and connect with them. And hopefully this show teaches people other people's methods, and people can learn from their experiences and the differences in different parts of the country from what people are finding. And I just really like that we get people on here we've never heard of. And some of the ones we've never heard of, well, most of the ones we've never heard of are some of the most fabulous guests we've had.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
they're the most
amazing people, that have just been hiding in the woods all this time, and we drag them up for one night and shine the light on them. So it's been an exciting time.
I'm just a little frustrated with all the people out there getting GoFundMe accounts and stuff and trying to get documentaries put together, and, you know, and they want to be on TV and be on these shows and stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, why?
That's their thing, though. You know, that's what their goal is. That's what they want to do. And I know it's not our thing, but, you know, some people couldn't figure out for $1 million why we have a radio show about Bigfoot. I mean, you know, they're like, well, why would you want to do that when we have TV shows about Bigfoot that are a lot better to watch, you know, more entertaining probably and not as informational. But, yeah.
I'm meeting a lot of new, interesting people. As far as I'm concerned, I'm enjoying that part of it.
Me too. I have made so many new and great friends with this show, and I'm thankful for that. I have met some really phenomenal people. And it almost everyone that we have on the show is just, we've had some, though, that were kind of interesting.
Interesting in another direction, yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's like, wow, okay.
But that's all right. That's entertainment. That's entertainment. You know, it entertains
well,
me.
not only that, but that is looking at something from a different perspective. Like when we had Ron Moorhead on, he really put a spin on the quantum theory and all of that, you know, had it been somebody else, we might have shut him down, but because it was Ron Moorhead, we didn't. And so it kind of taught us that we really need to be a little more open-minded. Even if we don't necessarily agree with the views of everyone, doesn't mean that there's not other people out there that do agree and would like to hear what they had to say. So we have to be fair. And we just don't want it to reflect on Graz, because Graz has a very scientific approach. And so he'll stand back when it gets woo-woo. So anyway, I'm ready for our guest. How about y'all? Do you have anything else to say, Graz, while you have a soapbox?
I'm fine.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us. It was awesome. It was awesome. Okay, how about sharing that beautiful bio right now? Mm-hmm. Oh, you have something else?
Uh-oh. I was just having a brain fart trying to remember how to pronounce his last name.
Bakara. Bakara.
I already forgot.
Well, I'm thinking it's Bakara. I'm going to go with Bakara, okay? You want to split 50-50 on this one? Wait.
Tomato, potato, potato.
Okay. All right. I'll put a couple of bucks on the Bakara.
Okay. When he comes on, we'll ask him. I think it's Bakara.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Nite Callers Bigfoot Radio presents David Bakara of Expedition Bigfoot. David has 3 daughters and a wife that shares his interest in research, both having developed a deep respect for nature and knowledge of the outdoors and wildlife. He attended Northern Florida Expedition 2011-2012 Washington Expedition and the 2012 North Florida Expedition. Earlier, David was in the U.S. Navy and now currently works as a leasing agent, spending his time off in the woods as often as he can, investigating Bigfoot reports. A member of the BFRO, David channeled his interest into a phenomenal museum called Expedition Bigfoot. There you can see casts, new articles, elaborate exhibits with sound, a life-size Bigfoot, and other equally interesting exhibits. And he's got a YouTube channel here that Lauren can put in the room, and the museum has a website that she can put in the room too. The museum is a must-see in your Bigfoot travels. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Grass. Hello, David. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Okay, is it Bakara or Bakara? Because we're just terrible with our memories.
It is Bakara.
Ah, God, you were right. Okay. Welcome, David Bakara.
Glad to be here.
David is from Georgia. We didn't put that in the bio because I wasn't sure. And there are some corrections to be made on the bio, too. You said earlier you are no longer a leasing agent.
I'm now a full-time curator of the Sasquatch Museum.
Is it called Expedition Bigfoot?
It is. It's actually Expedition Bigfoot, the Sasquatch Museum.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's so exciting.
It is.
That's
Who
awesome.
would think about doing something like that? Let's start out. Before you did the museum, you became interested in Bigfoot, and how did that come about?
When I was about 13 years old and my little brother was about 11, my grandmother dropped us off at the movie theater to see, you guessed it, The Legend of Boggy Creek. How many start off like that?
A bunch.
Well, not as many.
It's a cult classic.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I think the fact that it said based on true accounts and based on a true story just really grabbed my brother and I. And of course, at that time in the early 70s, you know, when you saw the words based on a true story, it pretty much meant that.
Exactly. Now it doesn't. It's loosely based on a true story.
Exactly. So that's how it all started.
Wow. So, how did you become a member of the BFRO? Did you wait years and years before you did that, or?
I think I pretty much gobbled up every article, newspaper story, magazine that had anything to do with Bigfoot on it as I was growing up. And then I kind of treated myself to a birthday present when there was an opening at an expedition in North Florida. And that was quite an eye-opener to see how it all worked. Two of the folks that were with us had sightings through thermal, and they asked me to be an investigator. after the expedition. And I said, sure. And then, of course, after that, when you start talking to all kinds of people from every walk of life, taking the reports, it really opens up your eyes. And you just see a whole sea of different kinds of behavior. And then once you're hooked.
Okay, I apologize. Are you still with us, David? So on your first expedition, you mentioned thermal. Were you able to see anything on thermal or hear anything?
Actually, for us, it was pretty uneventful as far as any kind of Sasquatch sightings. But after being there for a few nights, we realized just how rich the sighting history was in that park. And, and there was a lot of nice folks that came on. Had a chance to talk to a lot of other investigators and a lot of people that weren't investigators, but they were there for the expedition. We all got a chance to trade ideas and thoughts. And it was actually the first time I was with a group of people, all Bigfoot orientated, and it was I just really enjoyed it. Learned a lot.
I bet. But besides these big expeditions, did you ever go on any solo outings or just with just a few people?
Oh my! We just about every weekend. Either my wife and I, or a few other interested folks, we would camp out Green Swamp of Florida, Ocala, North Florida, the Panhandle, South Florida, over by Fort Myers. I mean, we did so many solo expeditions. I would say it was usually my wife and I. She just really enjoys doing it too. So we've been all over Florida and covered quite a bit up here in North Georgia too.
Have you had any experiences you would like to share with us?
Yeah, sure. About 4 years ago in Alva, Florida, we were doing an investigation where he wasn't really a commercial fisherman, but he used to catch so much fish, he might as well have been a commercial fisherman. And when he would bring his catch in and smoke them, he had visitors come in at night, and they were looking in the windows. He was afraid they were going to take his dog. He actually, one of the first nights they came in, he chased across the yard at night with a gun, thinking it was a prowler, and when it jumped over a 4-foot fence without even breaking stride, and it was breaking trees and screaming as it thrashed through the swamp. He realized it wasn't a person. So we got the call to go in. We set up a tent in his backyard, and within 2 hours after the sun went down, he started smoking fish. He says, this works every time. And lo and behold, we could see with a thermal, we took turns, we could see two, probably around 75 feet away, hiding behind 2 trees. They each were doing the peekaboo thing. Watched them for about 12 minutes before they finally got wise and realized we were watching them, and they just kind of moved off into the swamp. But it wasn't.
It was just something like that.
Pardon me?
How did you feel when you were watching something like that? Was that the very first time you had seen one?
It was, but since I was looking through the whole thing through a thermal, I didn't feel scared at all. I was just amazed to see how they were acting like big children. They weren't doing anything aggressive. They would put their heads back behind a tree, and the trees were just wide enough to cover their eyes, but their head and shoulders and arms were sticking out on both sides of the tree. I guess the trees were only about maybe 4 to 6 inches in diameter, so it was just enough to hide their eyes. So maybe they thought we couldn't see them. I just thought, how curious. And that's when I really started getting into the behavior. Why do they do the strange things they do? And that's really where my interest lies.
And what have you learned about that since you've been studying the behavior?
I tell you, the more people I talk to, because that's really where you're going to get your answers from, is just pulling in information from people all over the country, sometimes all over the world. Everybody's got a little tiny piece to the puzzle. I tell you, I think I've probably just realized I just keep coming up with more questions than answers because this thing gets so complex. The more you study it, the deeper the hole gets. And like I've told my customers, the museum, They ask me questions all the time. I said, do you think as you study this for years and years, you'd learn more, but all you realize is how little you really knew to begin with?
That's very true. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep.
Well, have you ever heard of vocalization that you thought was a Bigfoot?
I have never heard of vocalization. I've talked to so many people that have and listened to all kinds of on tapes, but I've never had the opportunity to hear it. I just had a guy come into the museum yesterday, just all excited. He was camping out and heard one scream. He said it was probably anywhere from 1 mile to 2 miles away, but he said it was so loud and so powerful that it permeated the muscles and the bones. He could feel the vibrations just reacting with his body. And that's really a common theme when people hear what they're pretty sure is a Bigfoot scream. It's usually not close. It's usually a long way away, but it's extremely powerful experience, and they never forget it.
I would think if they could feel it, that it would be a lot closer than a couple of miles. Wouldn't you think?
You'd think. I mean, that just seems to be a common thing. Sometimes it's over 2 ridges. Sometimes it's a quarter mile away, half mile away. Most of them don't think it was real close, but they always say it was so powerful that they could feel it. So I've never heard one, but they seem to be the common theme.
Have you ever had anything thrown at you?
I don't think so. I've had some interesting things happen in the woods. I did a wood knock during the middle of the day, and I was so sure I was going to get a reply, I didn't even turn my recorder on. And I did a wood knock up on the hill, maybe 100 yards away. A tree got pushed over. And I don't mean it was a tree fell over, because it wasn't. There was no wind. It was just a perfectly calm, sunny day. And you could hear this tree popping and splitting and fighting all the way down. You know, you can hear when a tree goes, when it's cracking and popping. Something's just applying constant pressure to get it to go over. And that happened in the middle of the day, and then we heard something stomping as we were looking for tracks on a creek bed. We should just walk miles on creeks, right in the creek, just looking for prints in some active areas. And we heard something stomping up on the hill behind us. I was with my wife, and we heard it up there walking like a man, but there's no trails or anything up there. It was breaking branches. But we never saw anything. That, too, was right in the middle of the day. So that pretty much sums up my experiences, my personal experiences.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about, you've been an investigator with the BFRO. Do you have any particularly fascinating reports you'd like to share with us?
Wait, I'm sorry. Reports.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what. Some of the most interesting things I'm getting, I've had several great reports. One happened in Ocala. I'm going to tell you, about 5 years ago. A fellow was driving. He loved to hike, and I think this guy was a fairly well-to-do fella. He had a little Mazda Miata, and he actually took this back and got stuck in the sugar stand. And he was trying to get his little car unstuck. And it was right in the middle of the day, and he went to the back of his car because he heard some branches breaking as he was trying to dig out his car. He thought maybe there's a bear in the area. So he goes to the back of his trunk, opens up his trunk, and when he closes his trunk, he has something thrown at him. Well, he's getting a little bit nervous. What's thrown stuff? So he gets inside of his car, closes the door. He's got the bear spray in his hand now. And then all this mud and chunk starts getting thrown at his car. And out from the woods, just during the day now, comes the Sasquatch, and it kind of squats down in front of his car, and it's picking up handfuls of debris and throwing at his car. And he's beeping the horn on his car, trying to get this thing to go away, hoping the sound of the horn will make it go away. He finally walks right in front of his little car to the other side of the little sand road, reaches down into some palmettos and pulls out a little baby Sasquatch. And as he pulls this thing up out of the palmettos, it acts like a little monkey, and it just wraps its legs and its arms around the neck. And this was, if I recall, it was a big male. And he said that as he was looking at this male, he had like love handles. It was well fed. But this baby was so malnourished, he could see the bones through the rib cage. And it was sick. And at first he thought it was dead because when he first pulled it up, it wasn't moving at all. And when it got close to him, that's when it wrapped its arms and legs. He thought it was dead at first. So, and it walked in front of his little car and off into the woods. I think eventually he got some cell service and somebody came up and rescued him. He never did get his car unstuck by himself. Oh, that's right. Somebody drove up the road and helped him get his car undug. He got on his way. He was strongly impacted by that. The wife and I were actually... Go ahead.
I bet.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah, that was probably one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah. That would be terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Terrifying. It reminds me of a time that I was with an old friend by the name of Crystal. We were down in an area that I know was very, very active, and we had gone during the day to look around down there because we had always researched there at night and have had a lot of encounters and stuff. But we'd never gone during the day to check out the geography. And we got back there and got high-centered. And there was only one man that knew where we were. I mean, we couldn't possibly tell anybody else how to get there to get us. And so this one man, thank goodness, we were able to contact him, and he was able to come and pull us out. But before he got there, it started getting dark. And we started hearing whoops and hearing movement, and we were in the thick of it. And it was very scary because we had no way to escape if things got hairy. And but he made it down there. He got us out in just the nick of time because the sun was going down. And, of course, that's nothing compared to what this poor gentleman went through. Oh, my goodness. My goodness. And you have another story to tell?
I'll tell you, there's so many. I mean, that's just one of the great parts of doing this. There's trying to call up one, but actually, probably the freshest one in my mind is somebody came into the museum about 3 days ago, an older couple, and he was probably in his mid-60s, and he says, if you really want to hear some Bigfoot stories, you need to talk to my mother. Well, that would probably put his mother somewhere in her 80s. And I actually had another researcher standing there with me. And there's something about Bigfoot stories from old, like Appalachian people that are really extremely interesting because it's not usually a quick road crossing or they think they heard something. A lot of times with these folks that live back in the woods, a lot of times it's a more prolonged and personal encounter for some reason. So I said, well, what kind of stories would your mother have to tell us? And he says, before I was born, my older brother was a baby, and he was sleeping. You know, my family, we were all raised in a small cabin on the edge of the forest. And one night, my mother could hear a little commotion coming from the baby's room. So she gets up in the middle of the night, walks into the baby's room, opens the door, walks into the room, and she is shocked at the surprise of her life. A Sasquatch has crawled through the window into the baby's room and is trying to breastfeed the baby.
Oh, my God.
Yep.
Holy cow.
I was looking at this gentleman thinking maybe he was trying to pull my leg or something, but he was serious.
Yeah.
So he said that I guess she called the deputies, the police, or got him over there somehow. I didn't get the end of the story because I wanted to hear it from her. So I gave the gentleman my card and said, please bring your mom in so we can chronicle this story. Because some of these great old stories, they're with folks that are a little up there in years, and we need to get these things written down before they're before they're gone forever. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping to hear from him. I told him I would actually come to the house and chronicle it, but we need to get it down soon. But that's an amazing story.
Yes, it is.
It has been reported.
And this happened a long time ago, right? So it didn't happen recently.
Yeah, this happened probably 60-some years ago.
Wow.
And this is in the same town I live in, so this is it happened in this town, and there's all kinds of reports still coming from this town. Boy, if you want to solicit some Bigfoot stories, all you have to do is open up a Bigfoot museum, because they come from all over. But I'm getting a lot of local stories from 20 to 30 mile radius. Everything from Class A sightings to footprints. Had 3 hair samples come in.
Man, that's what I was going to ask. I was going to ask if you had anyone come in and tell you stories, or if you had anyone come in and make a believer out of them, Yeah,
it's just nonstop. And it's too bad because I have some people say, "Why don't you get these folks on video camera? Get like a video camera, set it up." And what you don't understand is that Georgia's only got like 128 sightings on the BFR website, where Florida has like 200 and something. But if you put the states, if you put Georgia above Florida, and you look where all the Florida sightings are in North Florida, and you look where Georgia's at, it's almost like they don't cross the state line if you put a little pin in there. And it's not because they're not seen there, it's because people in Georgia don't talk about Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're going to come in and share a story with me, if you start breaking out the recording equipment, it'll all stop. That's just the way we are up here.
I have the same problem here, David, with the East Texans. They don't want to talk about it either. They don't. No. They would rather poke their finger at you and go, really?
Yep. And I just learned there's some unbelievably great stories out there. So the best I can do is just kind of take notes as they're talking to me. I don't respond with any personal questions like, what's your address? What road? I usually try to get the road that they live on, but I don't get too personal. I don't get everybody's name and ages and how long they've been. So the best you can really do to farm this information is to be respectful, get the information, gauge the folks, whether you think they're, honest or not, and you just have to take the information. That's about all you can do. If they're nice enough to share it with you, you just have to take it for what it's worth.
Have you ever had any paranormal Bigfoot reports? I mean, the kind that they've disappeared in front of them, or they levitated, or they went through a portal, or they jumped out of a UFO, anything like that?
One of the first reports I did, I had a fellow that was, I was on the phone with him, and I could see he got to the part of his encounter where he was very hesitant. There was like a long pause, and I said, "You all right?" And he was just a young kid. He was 12 years old, on the edge of the Ocala National Forest, and his mother told him to take the garbage out before he went to school. The sun was barely up, so it was just really still fairly dark outside, but he could make his way around the corner of the house to take the garbage out. Did what he always did, walked around the corner of the back of the house, and there's what he thinks is a bear bent over, digging in the garbage, and it had his back to him. And he stopped. He said he didn't make a single sound. And this thing stopped, and stood up on two legs and turned to face him. And this is where the pulse is at. And I was like, okay. And then he said, well, then I ran in the house. I said, well, there's a little bit more there. I mean, could you tell me, how long did you look at it? And he really didn't want to talk about it. So I said, why don't you just compose yourself, write me 2 paragraphs, email it to me in the morning. Tell me what happened when you locked eyes with it. He said, okay. So in the morning, I open up my email, and here's this very simple paragraph, and I'm just going to paraphrase it because I can't remember exactly what it said. He said it turned around and it looked at me, and I locked eyes with it. And he said, I was 12 years old. I wasn't reading any UFO books or Bigfoot books. I didn't know anything about any of this stuff. And he said, this thought just hit my brain. And as this thing was looking at me, I heard in my mind, you, in parentheses, man, are not from this planet. World, in parentheses. And he said, I have no idea where it came from. And he says, I told my mother, and I've never told anybody else. I've been living with this for my entire life. Now he's like probably 40-some years old. And I saw that one sentence. I just thought, that is just really odd. And he said, he didn't think it. He didn't imagine it. He doesn't watch that stuff. This is, I guess it was back in the late 70s, early 80s. I'm trying to remember exactly when. But he said he would never would have thought that on his own. So that's probably when I started doing some real digging into. Sometimes witnesses will tell you stories, but they're nervous about telling you all of it. So sometimes it takes a little digging.
Wow. I've heard that. I've heard that mentioned, around the campfire, somebody just throwing something out there and saying, Bigfoot may be the inhabitants of this earth and the rest of us are just aliens.
I've heard that too.
Said, that we are from another planet.
This Bigfoot is saying that we are not from this planet?
Yeah, that's what it says.
That's what the witness told me. He said that there was just really one sentence. You, man, in parentheses, are not of this planet, in parentheses, world. Since it didn't actually speak, I guess there was some sort of deciphering going on, in his mind.
Telepathy.
Yeah.
Right.
So he struggled with it. He struggled with it for a long time. I think he's still struggling to this day.
Wow.
I remember one other aspect to it. He said, when I stopped, he said, I didn't make any noise, but this thing knew I was behind him. He said, I just stopped. I didn't move a muscle. And this thing turned to face me like it knew I was behind him. So I think that was another part which kind of, if you listen to some of these folks' testimony, there's little clues in there. Little clues, some things they don't even understand themselves, and some things they're really trying to kind of gloss over it because they don't really want to talk about it because they don't have the answer to it. I certainly don't have the answer to it, but it doesn't mean we have to ignore all of it. It doesn't mean it didn't happen just because I don't understand it. So I make note of these things, and I'm a little surprised sometimes when I hear other witnesses come up with the same thing that don't even know each other. That's when things get interesting.
Wow, you know what? You've had some really great stories. Go ahead, Grass.
What was that book he was talking about last week? Quantum Bigfoot.
Yeah, the one that. That wasn't last week. That was, I think, Ron Moorhead was talking about that.
Right, yeah,
Moorhead. Book.
That was 2 weeks ago.
He's going to bring out September about quantum Bigfoot, about the quantum theory.
He was talking about Bigfoot being the Nephilim or something along that line, and I've been meaning to chat with him about that stuff and try to figure out what he's talking about because I studied all those Sumerian texts and stuff myself. Interesting perspective on things. man not from here.
Interesting. I'm from Venus, the planet of love. David, I was going to ask you another question. Doggone, where'd it go? Give me a second.
I have a question.
Go ahead while I think about it.
David, what does your wife think about this? How did she get into it? Was it you, or was she already interested in it before?
I tell you, I'm sure she never gave it much of a thought until we got together. And I remember when I became an investigator, I would spend a lot of evenings on my computer typing up reports, talking to witnesses on the phone. And she was getting a little antsy over there sometimes. You know, are you doing another report? And totally understandable, because some when you get into this stuff, it just really does. It can take over all your idle time.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, and she's a smart lady too. Like, I give my wife a lot of credit. She's smart, has a great open mind. So I said, why don't you just come with me on a couple investigations, and you'll just see why I just love doing this. So she agreed, and we had a couple of great investigations together, had a lot of fun, and she just got as hooked as I did. When you stand in front of police officers, ex-wildlife officers, city commissioners, retired Navy jet pilots, these are just some of the witnesses I've interviewed that had sightings. You just go, wow. I mean, it really puts a point on the pencil when you're standing here talking to this guy and his son who had an encounter, something was shaking the tree and throwing things at him. And these guys are visibly shaken. It starts to flick the switch in the back of your brain. Pretty soon I was getting calls at work. Hey, another report came in. Hey, did you read this on the internet? She's like calling me at work, and pretty soon I created like a little monster. But it was great, So I'm one of those very few extremely lucky guys. I tell her too that my wife just doesn't fight me on the Bigfoot thing. She's right by my side. It's just something, it's just a great couples thing. We don't sit around and watch golf on TV. Man, when the weather was nice, we had a weekend off. We had the camping gear. Talking about camping gear, at one point I had to buy a trailer to go camping to haul our camping gear. It was getting like ridiculous.
That's
we were
awesome.
like crazy laughing.
You're pretty lucky. Has she had any experiences, or just the same as you?
I think she wasn't on the expedition when those folks had those nighttime sightings. She's a very spiritual person, and I think, and she talks to a lot of ladies in the Bigfoot world who all tend to be a little more spiritual, not as scientific, which is a good thing because a lot of times science kind of just throws a big blinder in front of you. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes. So some of these gals really get into the more spiritual, and I've learned to trust my wife's intuitions. And so I don't think she's had any, other than those wood knocks when those things were stomping around us and the tree being pushed over, which were very powerful things. I don't think we share just about everything together.
It's time for intermission.
Okay, well, I guess we'll all take a break. David, if you want to go grab a bottle of water so you can get your voice ready for the next half hour, or 45 minutes. And Graz, you want to start the intermission? We'll be back in a few minutes, everybody.
Okay, we'll be back in 7.5 minutes.
Okay, we're back. That was Otis Redding and Smokey Robinson. For anybody out there that wanted to know who that was. And we're back with our guest, David Bakara. How you doing, David?
Very well.
Did you get you a break?
I did. I made myself a nice hot cup of tea.
All right. Well, I'd like to start out by telling us how you started your museum. How did that come about?
Well, I tell you, I always wanted to have, my wife and I are both big museum fans. We just love going to museums. And we're both haunted house fans. From Halloween.
Wow, so am I. I love that.
We're always trying to get our friends and neighbors to come with us around Halloween time. Sometimes we'll take a whole weekend and plan out where all the haunted houses are at, within like 200 miles, and go on one night, hit 2 or 3 one night, get a hotel room, get up the next day, do some things around town, and then head off and hit 2 or 3 more. We just, my God, we never laugh so hard. We have so much fun. And we always took note as to how some of these haunted houses were laid out. Same thing when we go to museums. I just like to, I look at things and see how they're made, and I don't know, I just love that. I love the way that things are put together. And we've been to some great museums. And when we moved up here about 3 years ago, my wife was working from home. She was a medical billing consultant. And we just noticed when we were downtown in Blue Ridge, we just noticed that all these families would come up here. So many families escaping the city, coming up to the mountains. It's a big tourist town up here. But there just wasn't anything for families to do. We got great hiking. Up here we've got lots of waterfalls. We've got great restaurants, T-shirt shops. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, all the usual nice little tourist things. But as far as something to do, something interesting, a museum, an aquarium, something we all like to do on a rainy day, or there was nothing. I mean, there isn't even a museum in the whole county, Gilmer County up here. So my wife and I just started tossing this thing back and forth. Why don't we just put what we like to do? And we've been to so many museums, and the thing we like about a haunted house is surprises. Not so much the scare, it's the surprises. When you walk in a room, you go, wow, you didn't expect that. And we always like the way that made us feel when somebody is successful in either surprising us or exceeding our expectations. So we never saw that coming. We just love that feeling. So that's what we built in the museum. Built a lot of the life-size sets off-site over a period of a year. We leased the building, which was an old honky-tonk bar for many years. A lot of the stuff was already constructed and stored, so probably about 2/3 of it just had to be installed. Of course, new carpet, paint, walls, stain. You can imagine what a honky-tonk has to be done to it to turn it into a museum.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yep. So, and I really gauge the kids. Nothing makes me happier than when I see a big family come in, and you can hear the kids back there going, wow, I hear them. Because all the walls in the museum are laid out so that you don't know what's around the next corner till you get there. Element of surprise and wonder is built in. And, we didn't build this to get rich. We built it to add some wonder to people's lives, especially young kids, because they're just, when they go to school, it's all just regurgitated, tired, old stuff. I don't think we probably had a much better education when I was young than some of these kids are getting now.
Yeah.
So science comes out of books. Science is some little film strip. When you walk into a museum, there's an 8.5-foot life-size Sasquatch, and these kids see that, and on all these casts, they put their hand next to it, and they see how big that hand is compared to the little hand, and the dad puts his hand there, and they see how big it is even compared to the dad's hand, and all the different foot casts. And then we have a big Native American exhibit, and they can see for themselves. They didn't read it in a book. There's not a lot to read there. It's all right in your face. We have a nice American Indian exhibit with pictures of different depictions of American Indians and Sasquatch regalia. We've got a life-size American Indian with a Sasquatch costume in the middle of a dance. So the kids can see it. They don't have to imagine it from a book.
Wow.
They see it, and I think that has a big impact on kids.
I think it would on grown-ups, too. I would love to see that. I noticed that there was the one exhibit that I saw in the video. It's of a man holding a door shut, and there's Sasquatch trying to get in. Was that from a particular true story, or?
Oh yeah, that's a depiction of the Ape Canyon incident in 1924.
Oh.
That's the first exhibit I designed in my mind, and when I walked into that old honky-tonk bar and I saw that bandstand, I said, there it is, Ape Canyon. Of course, all of us, there was just a bunch of wood piled up, and I just saw the way it's already laid out. So that's my favorite. It's probably my favorite display. It was the last one I finished because there's so many little parts of it. And people look at it, and I say, well, the kids see it. There's a TV there. We have going to have 9 TVs rolling at all. 3 or 4 different sets of headphones because there's so much stuff going on in there. We have a headphone there that you can put on at Ape Canyon. So as you're looking at the scene of these 2 guys holding the Sasquatch back trying to get in the door, one's looking in the window with his glowing red eyes. And then you can put the headphones on. We have a great friend, Joey, that lives in Blue Ridge. He's a sound engineer. He put together about a 15-minute loop of these things growling, banging on the door and jumping up on the roof and screaming and get the gun, they're coming in the door. And, I mean, so when you see it and then you put the headphones on and you hear what it was like to be in that cabin for 15 minutes with all screaming and hollering and shooting and banging on the door and the chaos. And it just really sends it home for the kids, for everybody, actually. So it's about as close to 3D as I can get it.
Yeah. So where did you get a lot of these casts and stuff like that? Were they donated to the museum?
Some were donated. One was a cast I made myself on the Betmakai Trail about 4 miles from my house. A lot of them came from the very generous Dr. Jeff Meldrum, who's got the best cast collection in the world. And he was nice enough to make us some of the best copies of the most interesting casts, visually interesting casts, including the Elkins Creek cast that was made in 1994 down in Pike County, Georgia. And I think a lot of people up here, not only are they surprised to see that Bigfoot was spotted in Georgia, but one of the best, quite possibly the clearest cast ever made of a Bigfoot was made right here in Georgia.
Wow. So what else can they find in the museum? I don't want you to give everything away, but I want people to go and see it. First of all, I need you to tell everyone where it is, and then tell us a little bit about it, because I would really like to see it myself.
It is located right in North Georgia, right between the small town of Ellijay and Blue Ridge. It's about 4 miles south of Blue Ridge in a little enclave called Cherry Log, Georgia, right on the main highway. Can't miss it. I mean, if you're driving north on 575, which branches right off 75, it's about an hour and a half north of Atlanta. We're only about 45 minutes from the Tennessee and the North Carolina border, so we're up in the northwest corner.
Okay. What hours?
We're open every day except for Tuesday. So we're not exactly off on Tuesday. That's just the day that we used to install some of the additions that we're making to the museum. I thought it was done when we opened it, but like I'm this crazy artist that I just can't stop. Once you know, if I see a wall with more than like 12 inches square, I got to stick something on it. So we just finished doing up the porch. So we know when you walk up, when you drive your car to the museum, as soon as you get out of the car, it's already hitting you because we've got music pumped out into the parking lot. It's just this really geared up, let's go music. So by the time, and as soon as you hit the front step to get onto the porch, it's being pumped out. And you see before you even get to the door, there's all this expedition gear, maps of the Olympic forest in Washington State with all kinds of special gear you need to go on there. Then there's another big window set up like the Himalayan expedition with the maps of Tibet and the Himalayan mountains. You know, all the spiked boots and snow goggles. So it's kind of runs the gamut between looking for Bigfoot in the U.S. and Pacific Northwest in much harsher conditions in the Himalayas. So by the time you hit the inside of the museum, the whole inside of the gift shop is designed after some of the old national park lodges. We've got a lot of replicas from the park lodges. So when you walk in, it's like this really comfy kind of sit down, you can stay all day kind of feel. Everywhere you go, there's music. There's some kind of music playing. And I'm trying to think. We've got 8 televisions in the room, and there's a theater. It seats about 25 people. It loops a 17-minute movie called The Wild Man of Kentucky. Everything has been combed through because it's really a family attraction. And I'm sure, as you know, any of us that have seen enough Bigfoot videos, a lot of guys, a lot of folks, when they see a Bigfoot or they're trying to film it, one of the first things that comes out of their mouth is the F-bomb because they can't help themselves. So and even with a lot of documentaries, you really have to go through every second of it because you're going to present it to the public and to families and children. There can't be any language like that in there. So I mean, I've got a stack of DVDs 3 feet high that we've had to go just to find the footage that we can show in the museum. There's still quality content, but family safe.
Right.
Yep. And large cast. We have full-size maps of Florida and Georgia. They're almost 4 feet high, almost 4 feet across, and you can see at a glance where the sightings in Florida and Georgia are at. We try to stay particular to this area because, let's face it, most of the folks that come up here are from Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, North Carolina. So we've got 2 of those big maps that people can see at a glance without having to read a big ream of paper to find out where the sightings are at. You look at the map and your eyes automatically go to where you live. And, oh, my God, I didn't realize I had 3 sightings right in my county. So those are big maps.
What about audio? Do you have any Bigfoot audio that you can share with the people there?
Oh, sure. Ron Moorhead was nice enough to give us permission to use his Sierra Sound CD. We have a full-size exhibit dedicated to the Sierra Sounds, a bank of 10 headphones. You got a large display of some of the behind-the-scenes photographs from the actual site, including the layout, casting some of the prints of what the shelter looked like, a map to the shelter so you can see where the recorder was at. We've got the recorders that were the same kind of recorders used by Al Berry and Ron Moorhead on display so people can see what that antiquated equipment looked like and what they were using to tape them. Bank of 10 headphones because, let's face it, everything just sounds better through headphones. So you can listen to them.
Historical. It's historical.
It's very historical. Oh, yeah.
I've had people. See it.
Yeah. We've got another audio I'm working on right now. Most of the TVs, the other television in the back is looping 4 frightening Bigfoot encounters, 3 hunters, and a guy that used to work for the U.S. Forest Service. Each one of them are retelling their story about a prolonged encounter with sometimes not 1 but sometimes 2 Sasquatch because a lot of fellows find out the hard way. When you see one, there's almost always another one around.
That's true.
Yep, and we have the ATV that my wife and I used to use in investigations in North and Central Florida. It's on display. It's retired. We're actually getting ready to build another one. She's equipped with dual parabolic dishes, thermal vision, dual infrared illuminators. It's a big jacked up gas powered. It's split gas and electric for quiet. So and it's got all the military regalia on it to break up your silhouette when you're sitting in the woods. Nothing can look in there and see you in there. It breaks it all up. So it's a pretty impressive vehicle. That's on display too.
Wow.
We also have a Teddy Roosevelt display. I think a lot of people are surprised to hear that Teddy Roosevelt, the retelling of the story that happened. I believe that was the Bauman incident, the first written account of a Bigfoot actually killing a person. So that's in there along with a 1902 edition of his book Into the Wilderness. That's on display with it. a bust of Teddy Roosevelt. And we've got it blown up so you can, that's probably about the only thing to really read is the Teddy Roosevelt story. So we have that up there on the wall so people can read it along with all the little Teddy Roosevelt artifacts. But we feel that you really have to, everything has to be out there. We can't portray Bigfoot as the gentle forest giant for everybody. We have to be honest, and that there's all kinds of different stories out there. I think that's part of the draw. God, you just when you think you've got your finger on it, you realize you don't have your finger on it. It's nowhere near it. But I think that's really want people, especially kids, to get involved in this. Just get their heads out of the telephones and off the video games, and try to tell these kids that reality, real life, what's out there, is far more fascinating than any video game or TV series on HBO. And when you get out there, woods, you start talking to people, real life is so much more fun than anything that's made up.
Amen. That is a wonderful concept. Kids do need something to pique their imagination.
Yes, ma'am.
And, wow.
Well, this is, if it's explained to a kid correctly, they should understand that this is basically one of the biggest mysteries in the world right now, is an extant hominid that's living at the same time as we are.
Yep. And I think one of the things that people always ask me is that I think they always go to the same thing. They say, if Sasquatch is real, if Bigfoot's real, well, how come the government doesn't just tell us? And I said, just ask yourself that question. Just keep asking yourself that question. And if that doesn't lead you to something, to an even bigger question, then I haven't done my job, or you're just not thinking. Just keep asking yourself that question over and over. If these things are real, how come we don't know about it? Why doesn't the government tell us? I'm not a big government conspiracy. I'm not trying to propagate that by any means, but why? How come we don't know about it? If there's so many of them, because the bear biologists have estimated there has to be between 3,500 and 10,000 of these in North America to have a viable breeding population. How can there
And all the forest rangers know about them, and on up the chain of command, and you can take that into conspiracy realms from there.
Right.
It's pretty much a given that they're going to end up in conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm. Well, some will say it's because of the lumber industry and the oil and gas industry and preservation, the snowy owl issue, and it goes on and on. The different reasons why the government doesn't want us to know about them.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is how I think about that. We heard about the spotted owl. That pretty much shut down the lumber industry, but we heard about that, right?
Right.
Isn't there some kind of little guppy fish out in California that we all know about that shut down another logging industry? Isn't that right? Some little fish up in Northern California, right? We know about that, right?
Right.
So why is it that Bigfoot would shut down the logging industry? I mean, there's all kinds of... I think, in my personal opinion, the secret to Bigfoot, the reason the government and the powers to be want to keep this thing in the realm of myth, is much, much bigger than the logging industry or even simple economics.
Well, now you really got me curious.
Are you getting into the X-Files realm with that?
X-Files realm? I probably would not do that, but I mean, it's only my opinion, but they're working awfully hard behind the scenes to keep this thing quiet, and let me add, it might not be for a bad reason. It's possible that we don't need to know about everything. I don't think the general public, as skittish as they are, would be happy to hear that a small percentage of Bigfoots actually had been known to kill people unprovoked. Could you imagine if that got out? There'd be people clamoring, well, we're just going to have to kill them all like they're coyotes or something. So it's not hard to imagine that there's a good reason we don't know everything. So it could be just...
maybe they don't want another Native American incident. You know how we just moved and eradicated Native Americans to certain areas and completely took over their land. And, many people believe that the Bigfoot are a people, that they're a relic hominid, but a people, that they are intelligent, they have family units, they have culture, and they maybe perhaps the government is using wisdom that if we don't know about them or believe in them, then that is perhaps ignorance is the best protection the government can offer them against the people. Because we've got some pretty ignorant people in the United States that would love to have a coffee table made out of Bigfoot feet. They don't care that it may be, and even if there were 10,000 or more than that, they're still endangered. I would think they would fall in the endangered species because there are not that many of them. Wow.
Well, I've got people that come up to the. I don't get too many of them. I tell you, I think the general public is really coming around for the most part. At least the ones. Maybe it's because they're coming into a Bigfoot museum, so they have to have some. They're going to have the mind already a little bit open when they walk in the door. But I still get a few guys that walk in. They're absolutely positively sure that this whole thing is a complete hoax. It's just not going to. There's no way it can be real. That these things can't possibly be real, and that there's no real evidence to back it up. And they look at me like I'm going to argue with them. And I said, in today's, with our science the way it is right now, you are absolutely positively right. It really doesn't make any sense that these things exist. How can there possibly be a breeding population between 3,500 and 10,000 right now? That's just now to propagate these species. What about the ones that have all come before them? We really should have found something by now. How come we don't find some small camps or some kind of, if there are people, how come we don't find some real evidence of, them eating, digging? I know we're not always looking for it, but there just ought to be more. I understand that the skeletons are found, sure. And, there's people out there that say the Smithsonian sucked a lot of them up. I think that's true to some extent.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that.
But there should be more. There really, speaking as a completely objective voice, there really ought to be more. And I think that's really another way of looking at this thing where it's just confounds rational thinking. And you almost have to change what we term as rational thinking, which is what we were taught in school. So I think you just you have to develop a different kind of a scientific mind, or you can still be scientific, but you have to realize there's way more than what we were taught in school that we understand currently in science. So I think that's just part of it, too.
Very well said. Very well said. Do you have people come into your museum and leave with a whole different mindset on the Sasquatch than they had before they went into that museum?
I would probably say the greatest compliment is when people walk in, they're very quiet, and they leave, and he can make some. Usually that's the fella, because believe it or not, most of the believers are ladies, and most of the guys that absolutely don't, the folks that don't believe are actually the guys. My wife and I are both a little surprised to find that out. When he stops us and makes a point of telling us, that was really interesting. he comes in and he was never a believer, never really read anything about Sasquatch. But he left when he just thought, that's just really interesting. And I know that guy is going to walk out the door and go, So next time he hears a Bigfoot story, if maybe a Sasquatch book crosses his desk or a new story pops in, he might just turn up the TV and go, this is kind of interesting. So if we can just crack the mind of some people, just crack the door a little bit, that's like a job well done. I'm happy with that. But, of course, we really want to inspire the young people just to kind of get them off the books and just like bring them into real, hands-on museum where the kids can see it. Really inspire them. That's what we really want to do, is inspire the young kids.
That is awesome. Well, when I talked to you earlier this week, you were talking about that you and your wife are working on 2 new exhibits. Can you tell us anything about those 2 new exhibits that you're putting up?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it going to be a surprise?
No, I can tell you about it because they're housed in a shack, which is a recreation of Herb Jones' shack from the Legend of Boggy Creek. I don't know if you remember that movie, but the old fellow that lived on Mercier Bayou.
Yes.
Yep. So we built a replica shack, and it's going to house...
With the bottle tree and all of that?
Oh, boy, I went round and round with my wife about that bottle tree. She wanted a bottle tree so bad, but we're so squeezed for space. Honey, we can't get a bottle tree in here. No way. So bad. She already got the bottle. She's looking at how we're going to put a tree, and there's just no physical way I can stick it in there. So, but, yeah, I hear that's a great idea.
You know what? You can put the bottle tree out front. Everyone will know what it comes from.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Exhibit.
Well, you'll walk in. It's so the outside is all covered in a lot of the things that Herb Jones or Herb Smith would have used, which is trout lines and nets and lanterns. And you go inside the shack, there'll be all little bits of any of the kind of medicines and smoking materials and hunting jackets. So it's like you'll be walking into his shack. He just stepped out for a minute. And inside the shack will be housed 2 exhibits. One will be the tribute to the Legend of Boggy Creek, and Lyle Blackburn, the author of the Legend of the Beast of Boggy Creek, a great book that explains a lot of the backstory to the Legend of Boggy Creek. Mm-hmm. He was nice enough to send us up some artifacts from Herb's shack, some pieces of the roof, some timber, got a few other, some nails and things from his shack. We're going to display those along with a copy of the 3-toed print that was found in Willie Smith's Beanfield that they showed in the movie. So we've got a great copy of that that'll be displayed. And, of course, we'll be running the movie, or actually it'll be the trailer to the movie, which a lot of people have never seen the trailer. We'll be showing the whole movie.
I haven't either, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it'll be surrounded by lots of behind-the-scenes stills. A lot of pictures a lot of people haven't seen while they were making the movie. And on the other half of the shack, it'll be a Howells exhibit. And Jim Sherman, a BFO investigator in Michigan, was nice enough to send us some of his audio. And then we've got some more audio from all over the country. And there'll be a large screen TV in there, a bank of 5 headphones. Excuse me. So people can put these headphones on, because let's face it, most of the witnesses that come in are people who have heard something. Most of them haven't seen anything. They were camping, and they were in the back of their house. They heard some powerful scream. They just can't even hardly describe it. So we've got about 20 minutes of different kinds of audio collected from around the country. So you'll be able to put those headphones on and see the audio or see the video and listen to the audio of the howls.
And does it tell you where they're from?
Oh, yes.
Oh, awesome. Mm-hmm. Oh, I would love that.
Yep. So that'll be the last 2 exhibits, I think.
Because I remember you were talking about setting up audio, and I'm going, wow, this museum even has audio. Well, guys, do y'all have any questions? Because we're getting down to about 5 minutes left. So I want to give you
a chance to ask questions if you have any.
Well, I was curious in the very beginning, you were talking about Florida mostly. You're based in Georgia. What was the big interest that got you down in Florida?
My big interest in Florida?
Yeah.
Well, I raised my kids down there, and that's where I lived for about 25 years, I guess. And that's where I was in the military down in Key West. I was on the Hydrofoil Squadron in Key West, so it's kind of where my home base was at.
Right. So you started out there and then moved to Georgia then?
Yep. My wife and I, she said, let's just take a vacation. Why don't we go up to North Georgia? And I said, okay. We came up here within 3 days. Oh, my God, it just blew us both away. It was so beautiful. The people were so laid back. I'm sure you know what it's like when you go to the city and everything is rush. And we were both looking to simplify our lives and slow down a little bit. And we ended up buying a house up here while we were on vacation, and totally unplanned. And now, of course, we're not slowing down a bit. We're just, we've got a small farm here. We've got chickens and turkeys, pig, greenhouse, got a big raised bed garden. So, I mean, there isn't any downtime. So we're either working on here at the house, because we have a little homemade timber home on a couple acres. So we're either working in the garden or with the animals or with the museum working. So didn't exactly slow down like I thought it was going to, but we're enjoying it.
You going to have any time to research?
Oh, yeah. Yep. As a matter of fact, I just called out into Central Georgia about 2 weeks ago where a witness thought a bear and a Bigfoot had gotten into a fight, and he found a bear that had been tore apart. Parts of this bear was all over the place, and there was a big blood stain. And so, I mean, I get dragged out pretty regularly. I was just up on a expedition just a few miles from here about 3 weeks ago. So, yeah, we still squeeze time into doing a lot of investigations.
That's good.
I'll tell you, David, you've been a very wonderful guest. And I'm very excited. I am going to try to make it a point that when I come to Georgia, I'm going to go to your museum. I would love to see it. It's what are the hours during the day? Is it 9 to 5 or?
It's 10 to 5, Monday, 5. Wednesday, and Thursday. We're closed on Tuesday. And then Friday and Saturday, we're open from 10 to 8. Get people that have dinner or something to do. And then on Sunday, we're open from 10 to 5.
Oh, my goodness. It is an everyday thing.
Yep.
I don't know how you find time for your farm.
I'll tell you, it's the only job. It's just so nice to work for yourself, but it's so nice to have a job that every day I'm like, it's time to go to work yet? It's time to go to work? I can't wait to get there.
Oh, my God.
It's different. You just never know who's going to walk in the door. Every day somebody's got a Bigfoot story. My brother saw one, my dad, my son. I saw one, me when I was in Vietnam. I mean, it's just like we were only been open 3 months, so I could write half a book already with some of these stories. So every day is just an adventure. You just never know who's going to walk in the door.
What a life. What a wonderful life you have. And I thank you so much for making this museum, and the whole intent behind it is just wonderful.
Thank you very much. I'd love to have you.
Well, I'm going to try to make it up there. I would love to see it. Love to. And I tell you what, we really enjoyed having you on the show. And we thank you so much for giving us your valuable time, because I know how valuable it is. And we want to tell you that you did a wonderful job. And I hope you'll come back sometime.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Well, everyone, let's say goodnight. Call it a show. And good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. See you next time.
Okay.